Be amazed, young people. Amazed at how many good Christian things can be done in the flesh externally. And how deceptive the heart can be. Just call my wife and ask her. My wife was converted last year. After serving on the mission field, eating things that would make a goat puke, going down rivers with me, grabbing a hold of anacondas, preaching the gospel, everything you can imagine, she was converted. It is amazing how religious we can be and still lost. How finely dressed, and even the most theologically has been working in your life. You might be somewhat under construction, you might be somewhat a mess, but there is an inescapable reality that God is working in your life to separate you from the things that He hates and to draw you unto the things He loves. And you can't even escape it even when your flesh wants to. He's before you, He's behind you, He's above you, below you, beside you, encircles you. You're captive. He's got you. And He's going to make you exactly what He wants you to be. Now, something is very, very important. And because I preach in so many different settings, I mean everything from, you would think, Old English Puritan churches to wild charismatic. I'll go anywhere they'll let me have a pulpit, folks. I won't let them come to mine, but I'll go to theirs. But I'll talk to the more charismatic among us, and I'll say, you know, you talk a lot about drawing nigh unto God, drawing near to God, approaching the throne of God, and all these things, but you have forgotten that in order to draw near to the throne of God, you've got to separate yourself from the world. Like my little boy when he was learning to walk, and he'd stand up and grab a hold of a chair, and I'd say, Ian, come, but I was always out of reach. And he'd have to make his first really moral decision. I want Dad, but in order to get Dad, I got to let go of the chair. It's the same way. You want to draw near unto the throne of God? Then separate yourself from the things that are not found by the throne of God. But at the same time, I meet a lot of people more in our circles who talk a great deal about separating, but their separation is an end to itself. I separate because I'm separated, and I rejoice in my separation. Then it's possible you're a lost Pharisee. Because separation from the world is not the goal. Separation from the world is a means in order to reach the goal, which is separation unto God. Separation unto God. Separation unto Him. Most people that I've seen that have been involved in somewhat of separation and speak much of separation are by and large very unhappy people. Very unhappy people. Why? Because they've only... I mean, just to separate unto nothingness is no good. Here I sit all alone in my room painted white. Man, I'm bored. But it's separation from and separation unto Him. Now notice I said Him. Not principles, not wisdoms, not ways of life. Separation unto Him. Because my dear friend, if anything is your goal other than Him, it's idolatry. It is idolatry. I desire in my life to be God besought. One of the things that I love about the more Celtic, Irish, the old stuff, is before Christianity came into them, they were involved in heavy paganism. And they worshiped trees, and they worshiped creeks, and they worshiped everything you could possibly worship except the God who made all that stuff. But here's the thing. When they were born again, here's what happened. They saw God in everything. We almost see God in nothing but a building with pews in it. How do you know if you're walking with God? When you come across a mud hole in the middle of the creek and it has tadpoles swimming in it and you don't know how they got there and you fall down on your knees and worship God, then you're walking with God. When everything is a reality. Everything is a reality of Him. Absolutely everything. A little boy said, Dad, who painted your tie? Because I always ask him, who painted the sky? He said, who painted your tie? I didn't say men. I said men that God empowered and taught to paint my tie. Because even if they were unbelieving pagans, they only did this by the power of God. You see, everything. Everything. My goodness, if you're a Christian, there's no such thing as secular in your life. The pots and pans of your house are holy. Everything you do unto God, whether you eat or drink or any other thing, it is for the glory of God. And if it is not for His glory, it's sin, my friend. It is sin. I always use this illustration when I'm speaking to university people, because they always talk about the good atheist. You know, someone will always come up to me or stand up in the middle of the auditorium and say, well, what about the good atheist? And I say, oh, I have no problem with him. He's going to heaven. And all the conservative Christians just get really spooky when I say that, till I explain myself. I say, oh, he's going to heaven. By the way, before you sit down, what's his name? What's whose name? The good atheist guy. I mean, I've been hearing about him at every university I've been speaking at, and I've never met this guy, nor does anyone have his name, nor his address. I mean, do you have his telephone number? No, and that's precisely my point. It's a figment of your own imagination. First of all, a good atheist doesn't exist. Doesn't exist at all. But here's a point that I always make with him. I said, imagine an atheist who has an atheist in Georgia has a man who hates him in Chicago. But the man in Georgia who's an atheist finds out his enemy in Chicago is dying. And there's only this one type of tree in Georgia that if you boil it down, you can get a broth out of it and it'll save his life. But the thing costs like $100,000. So the atheist, he sells everything he has and he buys the tree, boils down the broth, and then he walks all the way to Chicago, uphill both ways in a snowstorm, on his knees in broken glass. And he gets there to Chicago and he gives the bowl to the man, and the man drinks it, his enemy drinks it, and the man is saved. I say, is that a good thing or is that sin? And everyone says, well, that's a good moral thing. I said, no, it is sin. And they say, how can it be sin? I said, because sin is not sin because of what it does to men, but the relationship it has with God. He did not do that for the glory of God. He did it for His own glory. He's an idolater. As a matter of fact, if He did do anything positive, it was by the common grace that was given Him, and the work that He did was not in His own power, but in God's power, and He's taking credit for what God did. But let's take that back to ourselves. You know what the Chinese Christians... this Chinese Christian, after he visited America, he said, I'm amazed what you American Christians can do without God. Think about that. But you see, everything. I mean, if God is calling us to fast and to pray, we do it unto His glory. If God releases us from a fast and we sit down and He puts before us a feast of food, every goblet should be picked up for His glory, rejoicing in Him. If we're out witnessing or going door to door, this or that, it's for His glory. My goodness, if we're hunting in a deer stand in the middle of October with a beautiful frost on the ground, it is to look at every sparkle of sunlight off of that frost and worship God. Everything. Everything. Everything for His glory. And that's something that needs to be asked of you, of a reality. Is your life lived for the glory of God? And is it a reality in your life that you can see God working in you in a way that is inescapable? That there is a real sense in which He has hemmed you in, and you don't have a problem with that. As a matter of fact, the greatest sorrow in your heart would be if He ever opened the door and allowed you to run outside the pen. Is this a reality?